Welcome back, all my 40k fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to give you my list preview for tonight in our battle with Lane and his DeathWatch. Today, I'm going to be bringing the Grey Knights, and there's a lot of reasons why. And a lot of those we'll go over in the beginning of the battle report, but to give you a basis of it, Lane is testing his new Space Marine / DeathWatch, however you want to look at it, to take them to tournaments and be competitive with them, etc., etc., etc. My Grey Knights, I like the way they are. There is some small tweaks that I might make if I was to take them to a tournament and the sorts. But in general, they're really tough. You know, it's a tough infantry build, a lot of 2-up saves and stuff like that. And that's what Lane's trying to build into. He made some tweaks and didn't want to go too far away from the infantry. So, in other words, Lane's coming here to table me after what happened last time. So the question is going to be, can Lane remove all of my resources, or can I outscore him and run up the scoreboard and take home the W? Well, guys, let's look at the list and talk about what we're bringing today. But before that, as always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Turn on the bell for notification to get notified on all the content, including Lane's battle report, as well, or Lane's army roster, as well as the battle report itself. So, let's get over into the Grey Knight list. Some of you may have seen this before on the channel. It's very, very similar to my previous builds with just one tiny big tweak. All right, guys, here's the list. And here we are. Here is my Silver Legion of Grey Knights. I don't even know what you would call them. I was going to say Silver Tide, but there's not really that many infantry, but it's a lot of silver. And as friends of the channel will know, I am a big fan of silver is greater than gold. I like beating up Custodes all the time with the Grey Knights. All right, here we go. So, the list. Let's start off with the infantry that we bring in. First of all, our Warlord with the Sigil of Exegetes will once again be the Tech Marine. The Tech Marine will have 4 servitors in this list that will be accompanying him attached to a squad of Strike. More on them later. I will have the 2 Meltas in there. The Sigil makes it so if I get shot at, I can pick them up and put them somewhere else so they don't get shot at. That combined with Strike Marines and their sticky objective rule will hopefully, as I like to call this unit, it will be the small child that runs from room to room, turning on light switches and making my opponent the parent that has to constantly chase them around trying to turn the light switches off. Multi-Meltas are also just good at killing tanks, the last damage on a tank. And being able to be a higher damage weapon is kind of nice in this army that I don't have very many of the high damage weapons as other lists would. Now, my other character that I will be taking in this list is the one, the only Castellan Crow. Castellan Crow will be accompanied by 10 Purifiers. Again, more on those guys later. Castellan Crow buffs the Purifiers to give them +1 to their Purifying Flame. And he's just nasty and mean himself. In combat, he's got a good sword. He also can 0 out 1 failed armor save, so it makes him a little bit tougher to kill. So yeah, in general, he's mean, he's nasty, he's cool. I like him. I've liked him a lot. He's done a lot of work, and he's relatively cheap for what he can do. All right, so now into those 2 infantry that we talked about. First, we'll talk about the Purifiers. So the Purifiers is a 10-man squad. This is one I've been running for a while. In my opinion, it's one of the best anti-infantry units. It is very, very strong at doing so because of their Purifying Flame. But you got to have Crow with them, because Crow gives them an additional shot. And that anti-infantry 4-up queens, I can put so much pain down onto units. Now, these guys are not going to do well into the higher armor, higher toughness, mostly the higher armor saves of things. And being able to proc Armor of Content means that I can't just send them right into some of Lane's bigger DeathWatch kill teams and expect them to kill them. But their damage is very nice, very reliable, and then combined with the Incinerators being able to overwatch and automatically hit, because Flamers are awesome at that. These guys are really, really good at being able to clear and take corners and things. Not to mention with all the Grey Knight shenanigans, being able to pick up off the table in so many different ways. These guys have a lot of value. All right, moving over into the Strike. I got 2 5-man squads of Strike. Now, these guys both come with a side cannon because they get them for free, and I like the 2 damage. I like having the 2 damage to be able to kill a Marine with that. As well, these are basic 5-man squads. And now with Grey Knights having only 1 type of force weapon. They will all have their nemesis force weapons. One of the 5-man squads will be joining the Tech Marine and his servitors. Now, the servitors are a separate unit, so at any time I could technically deploy these all separate. But in this build, and most likely in this matchup, the servitors will be joining the Strike Marines, so that when they get shot at, they're able to bounce around the table. A lot of this list plays off of being able to do very, very well with this tactical secondaries, being able to reset at the beginning of each one of my turns, and to be in the best position I can be to score secondary objectives. Next up, we got 2 5-man interceptor squads. I absolutely adore these guys. I was originally looking at ways to put a 3rd in here, but after my last game, I made modifications to the list. I have not run it with these modifications yet. So before I go making any bigger changes, I want to run this one time. And so for that, we only have 2 squads of the interceptors. Interceptors, 5-mans, means that they can deep strike in, get 9 inches away at a decent point on the map, as well as the fact that they have the fire and fade mechanic in their psychic powers. So when this unit shoots in the shooting phase, after it resolves, it can then immediately move 6 inches, but may not charge afterwards. This is huge for being able to steal objectives, as well as scoring some other more difficult secondaries, such as engage on all fronts or behind enemy lines. Now, granted, I would not be able to do some of the action-based ones because I would have to shoot. That doesn't mean these guys can't do any action-based ones, just not off that. But behind enemy lines and engage on all fronts can be ones that are difficult to snag. Not to mention, these guys could get real sneaky and take a secure enemy outpost and score me 8 points on a turn real easy. So that's a big reason I've been considering trying to get a 3rd in here. For right now, we have the 2, and the 2 do quite well. And last of the infantry is my Terminators. This is a 5-man squad. I have been considering going back over to bringing the Grand Master in here, but honestly, these guys have been doing just fine as just a 5-man squad. They are very tough, 3 wounds, toughness 5. They're 4 up invulnerable save, combined with the fact of having an apothecary to bring guys back, as well as the fact that they can teleport around the field in all the Grey Knight shenanigan ways. And they're all going to be objective control 3 thanks to the banner that I have included in here. These guys are great for just being able to steal objectives and hold objectives with very little models involved. Now on to the vehicles. All right, starting off, we'll go with R3, Nemesis Dread Knights. Now, none of these are Grandmasters. These are all Dread Knights. One dude has a sword. The other 2 will be with hammers today. So the hammer is great for anti-vehicle, and being the fact that we don't have a lot of high AP, high damage weapons like that, it feels almost necessary to give these guys the hammer to be able to rush in there and do the damage. While the sword has a decent strength and decent AP, the hammer is just far superior, not only in the realm of being able to tank shock for a significant amount more damage, but it just hits harder overall. Now, the sword is not terrible, and that's why I still want to run one of these, because there are some scenarios and situations, and I think Lane definitely will have some of the units that I would like to see this into, is units that generally have a little bit of higher toughness, better save, and more wounds. Units that kind of are jacks of all trades, but yet masters of none. So that sword is going to come in handy for fighting units like that. And as we see the edition evolve, I think we're going to see more and more units that we might want to be able to hit that higher damage to be able to pick up full models. You know, if you're only doing 2 damage and you're hitting a Terminator, they're going to soak those up pretty well. So having that D6 damage weapon on him that can wound on 2s comes in handy in that situation. That does hit at a better profile. Now, he also has a sweeping profile to be able to go into things that may have a really good AP but a low strength, where a Dread Knight could wall them and just defend for days and clear the guys out of there. So there's some unique tech behind the sword that I do like in bringing one to the table. But ultimately, the value just comes down to these hammers. The hammer brings the most value possible that I can see on the Dread Knights. Now, when we talk about value, these guys are only 185 points. And after the recent point drop, I went from 1 to 2. And after my last game with these guys, I'm like, why am I doing it? Why am I not bringing 3? It is kind of slightly disappointing, and I'll talk about that afterwards after we get through this whole list. But I feel better about Dread Knights this edition than I have editions in the past. And last, but surely not least, know we're all excited to see him. He's been a staple. He's been a big part of this list for a little while, and we'll see how much longer that's going to last. And that is my Land Raider with las cannons. That's right. He is coming equipped with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 of the Godhammer las cannons. Slightly better strength, +1 damage. He also will have the Hunter Killer, the Multi-Melta, and the Heavy Bolter. So he will be able to put down some other interesting damage. But the big reason you take him is for the las cannons. And the tough part about this is he comes in at only 240 points. 240 points. Maybe I might be slightly off on that, but he is relatively cheap for what we're getting. He's tough, he's durable, and considering the fact that everything in my army is just as tough and just as durable, it just kind of leads my opponent to, okay, well, I may need these bigger weapons to go at Dread Knights and stuff. He is one unit that can actually bring the long-range firepower. There's not really much access into anything else. I know some people have talked about double-up servitors and things like that, but this is a 48-inch range las cannon that I can hide behind a wall, put part of it back there to gain cover, and then armor a contempt. So this guy will have a 2-up save all the way up until AP2 with tactics like that I can use on this guy. He has been very, very interesting and sometimes really swingy. He's not going to take down he's not taking Imperial Knights off the table and ripping them off the table, but smaller vehicles that I really don't want to invest resources into, he has been golden for. Things like Armigers, Dreadnoughts. He does the damage, and he does the damage well. So one thing that's always kind of tough with Grey Knights is we have a really small model line. There isn't very much. The strike kit is strike, purifiers, purge, interceptors, and if you wanted to, you could probably make a Brotherhood champion out of there as well too. So it gets kind of tough when it's like, oh, we're running Dread Knights again this edition. But then when you look down at it, you're like, but there really isn't that many other options. The biggest disappointment that I have is how much Paladins got weakened. And I've said this in the past. The Paladins just need a little bit more. I don't like that the Paladins lost the Apothecary. I mean, they had the Apothecary for a long time, then went over to Terminators. That's disappointing. I don't see really why they don't have that, and hopefully when we get a book, maybe that'll be changed up. However, Terminators do a nice job. They're a little bit cheaper, and while some may say, oh, but you can do this with Paladins, you can do this with Paladins, for me right now, Grey Knights, we want to play on the secondaries. The Grey Knights are able to pick up 3 units at the end of my opponent's turn, and then reposition them and replace them 9 inches away during my next reinforcement step. This means I can pick up 3 units, basically like having 3 wild cards in my hand, then draw my tactical for the turn, see what I need to score, and then go, okay, this is where you need to be to score that. This is where you need to be to score that. By the way, I also have these things in strategic reserve that are also going to come in, and let's start scoring points. Being able to score some of the secondaries early on and keep my opponent backpedaling to try to catch up with secondaries and score points. Not to mention the fact that it's also very easy for me to start shutting my opponent down in primary, start taking primary points away from them. Because of the style of my list, they may score primary late in the game. Lane, very much so, may be able to score really well on primary late in the game. So the more I can cut off in the early game, and the more points I can funnel away from him, or anyone for that matter, is very advantageous for me in the end and the late game. So I am looking forward to get Grey Knights back on the table. This is a game more for Lane, allowing him to get some practice in and see what he's able to do with it. And a lot of this format is going to be talking about those practice and the practice opportunities and what you cannot do, and all-encompassing of everything that we're looking at, what Lane may change and everything like that. This is for Lane, mostly, in this game. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoy the roster. Feel free to ask questions in the comments section. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.